Hello, great souls. Welcome to our Living Yoga Satsang talk. Let's begin together with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, and beloved Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow to you all. Guide us in our time together. Help us to dive deeply into the yogic teachings. Help us to apply this wisdom to our own journey, to utilize these tools to awaken to our own divine self, and to share the light that we receive with all. Om, peace. Amen. Okay, so today I thought we would look at two pillars of philosophy in yogic teaching, the Gunas and the Yugas, and talk about how they can be relevant to our personal journey, to our spiritual life, how we can utilize these philosophical teachings in daily life. So the Gunas, and this is all based on Yogananda's teaching, Paramahansa Yogananda, as well as Swami Kriyananda, how he's taken Yogananda's teachings and refined that in many books, but especially the Art and Science of Raja Yoga. So what Yogananda said, and this is understood in yoga and in India, the gunas are understood. But again, I just like to clarify the reference point. So the gunas, what Yogananda said, these are three characteristics of qualities in creation. These three qualities, and they influence us. And they're not only around us, but they're also within us. So the three qualities of the gunas, the first is sattva or sattvic, and that's very elevating. So sattva is elevating, light, expansive, that which leads us toward our own divine self, to commune with the divine within us and around us. Things that are sattvic are elevating and expansive to our consciousness. The second guna is raja, or rajas guna, rajo guna sometimes referred to, and this is simply activating. So rajas is activating energy, and it can go in either direction. It can be, that energy can move toward that which is uplifting and expansive, or it can move down to that which is heavy and darkening and obscuring the light, which is tamas or tamoguna. So tamas is darkening, heavy, obscuring the light of our own soul nature. And these three qualities are always active at some level within us and around us. And understanding the gunas, we can begin to work with them consciously. So once you know the gunas and they become part of your language, part of your understanding, and I certainly hear this with other friends who practice and live a yogic lifestyle, I might eat something or go somewhere and I could describe that as tamasic or sattvic or rajasic. And friends could describe that to me of things, you know, how was that movie? It was very rajasic, which would mean very activating of energy. It doesn't make it bad, but it really does describe the quality of the experience. So music can be very rajasic. And in yoga teaching and yoga practice, everything of creation has these qualities. So everything we interact with in life, we can begin to look at it from the perspective of, is this tamasic? Is it rajasic? Is it sattvic? And in a yogic lifestyle, we're always moving towards sattvic. That's what we're wanting because it supports us in our higher aspirations. We also need to work with ourselves where we are. So if we demand too much of ourselves, and this can be really on any given day. Let's say I wake up and my mood is heavy. I feel heavy. I feel tired, sluggish, unwilling. That can come into play. So, very tamasic. It can happen. If that's going on for me, to try to work with that by introducing things that are highly sattvic, very elevating, I'm going to say it depends on my receptivity. I've been leading a yogic lifestyle for a long time, so it's easier for me to shift from tamas to sattvic. But generally speaking, the best thing to do is move to rajas. Get the energy moving. Do something that gets the energy moving, and then we're moving out of tamas into rajas, and from there it's much easier to move toward sattvic. We talk about this in teacher trainings when we are helping our teachers work with their students to observe where does the student seem to be, what might they be open to. And again, if we try to offer tools and practices that are too far beyond where someone is standing, it becomes very discouraging. And this can be how, without meaning to, we can relate to ourselves. I can ask more of myself than I'm ready to do. So with food, with diet, there are heavier foods, excuse me, and in the art and science of Raja Yoga, I'll hold that up for you. Swami talks about the gunas with diet. One of the things that he says all foods are divided according to their essential vibrations. And that's really what we're talking about with the gunas, is there's a vibration to the gunas. These three qualities, elevating, activating, and darkening, are said to be inherent in all things created. The whole universe is a product of the mixture of these three gunas or qualities, which is what I was saying. So let me talk about where he mentions, here it is. Okay. So of all material foods, fruits manifest the sattva guna in its purest form. Specific fruits are said to actually help one to develop spiritual qualities. Bananas carry the vibration of humility, pears of peace, grapes of devotion. Interestingly, he said, if you turn grapes into fermented wine, that has a quality of lust, a vibration of lust. So in its pure form, it is devotion, and fermented, it has a quality of lust to it. Cherries are of good cheer. And Swami mentions, interestingly, in English English language, there's a expression, life is a bowl of cherries. And the idea of that's an older expression, but it talks about cheerfulness. So cherries for cheerfulness. So you can learn more about, and with Ayurveda, you can learn more about these qualities and how to work with what works for your body. But what I'll say is that a sensitive practice of awareness can teach you a lot. If you pay attention to how you feel after you eat, you can have a sense of how that food is affecting your consciousness. And that's why we care about, it's one of the reasons we care about working with the gunas, is we have a say in the influence of our consciousness. I mean, it's so powerful to know that if I wake up in a tamasic space, I don't have to stay there. It's not my destiny for the day, which without the tools, it can feel like that's just the case. There's an expression, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or someone else woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And things can seemingly go from bad to worse, and maybe they do, because our consciousness is just moving in a particular direction. When we have tools and awareness, we can begin to shift that. So we look at, where am I? So with rajas, let's say I find myself, if I feel very excited or agitated. So this is an interesting part of rajas, because Generally speaking, culturally, and I'm speaking of Western culture here, it's considered a positive thing to be excited. And it's not a bad thing, but what happens with excitement is we can actually lose our center, right? So much energy is moving. I lose connection to my highest self and to the inner guidance of my soul. So that there's a difference between enthusiasm, which is a lot of energy, and joy, dynamic, more sattvic, versus excitement, which I might feel really happy, and it's kind of a jumpy energy. And children tend to demonstrate this beautifully because, as Swami said, they haven't learned to basically hide what they're feeling. So, you just know how they're feeling. You know when they're low, they drag themselves. I remember there was a comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, if you know him. He was talking one time when he said when he was 5 years old, his mom would take him on errands. And at a certain point, he'd just reach his limit. And he said, children will just lay down on the floor. And he remembers doing that in the bank. His mother they'd done various things and he just was laying on the floor. I can't take another moment. We can feel that way, but as adults, we rarely do that, right? But we feel it. And if you're sensitive for yourself or with someone else, you can see it in them. So the rajas, the energy, the jumping energy, children will do that. They jump up and down. Well, adults can do it too. And you might notice it in yourself. And so directing that energy is really the key, is being able to say, now, if I've been tamasic and heavy, it's better that I feel excited about something. That can be a really positive progression to go towards excitement because the energy's moving. Now I want to get off the couch. Okay, I have energy for this. I'm looking forward to it. It's not at all a bad thing. It's just that once you have energy, in terms of a yogic lifestyle, we will have more fulfillment if that energy is channeled in a way that is more in our center and more elevated here. So in yoga, this is the spiritual eye, the sixth chakra. When I learn, and this is a practice of pranayama, the directing, conscious direction of the flow of energy. So I take that excitement, and one way you can work with it is if you're excited, pause and take a breath, right? So feel all the energy, bring that energy in consciously. You still feel it, but it begins to calm. It begins to not drop to tamas, but it just becomes, and this is a sensitive practice, what I would say, is learning how to work with energy, learning how to work with excitement. What I used to find before the practice of yoga came into my life is that I would get overstimulated. I would get very excited, and it would be a combination. I would be excited, enthusiastic. It would kind of blend until I learned how to channel excitement to be a more strong current upward while I'm stable and grounded at the same time. And then there's a soul quality, one of the soul qualities, divine qualities, Yogananda describes as joy. Also power, right? There's 8 aspects of God that Yogananda said we can tangibly touch. So enthusiasm is more power and joy combined. And again, a training of the consciousness to move towards that. What else would I say? Well, let me talk a little bit about the yugas, and then I'll talk about these working together. So the yugas in yogic teaching are cycles of time. And it's said that all of creation goes through a cycle of time, which is sattva, and that's, Satya Yuga is the highest age. And in Satya Yuga, I want to get my, I just moved my sheet. Well, fortunately, I know it. So let me just see if I put it down underneath me. Oh, it's right here. Okay. It's easier if I have this as a reference. So Satya Yuga is the higher age. And it's said that in this age, when we are in Satya Yuga, the mass consciousness is very elevated and spiritually minded. So spiritual truths and teachings are very easily perceived and understood. It is where most people are coming from. In every age, you can have people that have a different level of consciousness. So Satya, truth, that is the highest age. And Asha asked Swami one time, in that age, what are the people like, And what he said is that in Satya consciousness and the age of Satya, people are like, because she would know Ananda and have that reference, he said people running things are like people at Ananda, meaning they have a very elevated consciousness. It's not that Ananda will be running things, but people who are have a desire to live in their highest self, to express the yamas and niyamas, to live by them. It's a natural tendency. So it's a beautiful age, for those who are inclined to truth, those who are wanting to live a spiritual life and live from their soul nature. It's very attractive. And it's said that we experience all these ages. Yogananda said, as the soul evolves, it goes through the different ages. Each age has a teaching. It has something, because another thing that Swami said, Asha was joking with him and said, next time could we come back to Satya? Could we wait for Satya Yuga? He said, even Satya Yuga is not self-realization, right? The ultimate goal is full awakening of our highest self, complete union. That's the meaning of yoga. So as beautiful as Satya is, there's still a quality of separation. It's very slight. It's very, it's a very refined age. So there's not a lot of difference between understanding yourself and the divine. But full liberation is where there is no separation. We live in a complete sense of union, that one with all. So Satya is beautiful, and it makes it easier to live by spiritual principles, right? It's a restorative time. It's said that yoga, the teachings of yoga, come from a much higher age. So one of the reasons, so let me just finish that. So there's Satya Yuga, and there's Treta. And Treta is an age, it's considered more of the mind, and it's a sensitive, so it's mental, but like telepathy. People can communicate much more sensitively. They don't need words, and they rarely speak, because people are able to perceive the thoughts of others and send thought. So it's a much higher age of understanding. It is, Treta is considered in alignment with Rajas. So Satya and Sattva, the guna, sattvic guna, those are in alignment with each other. Treta is in alignment with Rajas because there's a lot of energy. It's elevated, so it would be right activity. So that Rajas energy would be automatically geared towards higher principles. So again, it's an elevated age. Dwapara is the age of energy, and Yogananda said that's the age we're living in. In fact, it was Swami Sri Yukteswar, his guru, his direct guru, who was he was a guru, and he was a brilliant man, and he understood mathematics and science, and he was able to recognize that with the yugas, there had been a miscalculation. And so it's interesting, and I've experienced this from friends and students, new students from India. Sri Yukteswar said that Kali Yuga ended and Dwapara Yuga began in the 1700s. And that is not everyone in India. Many people in India think we're still in Kali Yuga. I just go by what the gurus say. I trust the Yogananda saying we're in Dwapara Yuga. And what's interesting about the yugas, and there's a beautiful book on the yugas, you can look at in civilizations, things like the pyramids, right? There's things in civilization that demonstrate higher ages, and they're a mystery. Like, well, how did it happen? How are people able to build these kinds of things and do these things? in yogic teaching, it's because it came from a higher age, that people had that ability and that understanding. So let's see, what else would I say? So I was talking about Dwapara. So it said that we are in Dwapara Yuga and that Yogananda is a guru for that age. So much of the tools and practices of yoga that he brought and emphasized were about pranayama, how to work with the direct flow of energy, of life force, and our own consciousness. So Dwapara Yuga, interestingly, in terms of mass consciousness, lines up with Rajas and Tamas. A lot of energy, but not enlightenment. So it's considered a combination of ignorance and activity. And that always makes me smile because the implication of that is that leaders, the world leaders, could be very powerful with energy, but not very enlightened. And I certainly see that, right? I see that it's not that we don't have great spiritual teachers, but they're not running the world. They're not. Those who are running politics or running the material realm they fall right into Dwapara Yuga. They could be innovative, creative, dynamic, but not enlightened. So the decisions that they make, no, that's not everybody. But when we talk about the yugas, we're talking about mass consciousness. So just to say, even within politics, in any realm, you can find individuals who are very enlightened, very, their consciousness is reflects a higher yuga. And Kali Yuga is the most darkening age, and it was a time when reality was understood only through what I can touch, form, material form. So in terms of spirituality, it's a time of dogmatism, right? Where the consciousness is no understanding of energy at all. That, something that we take for granted today, that all form is in essence energy, and that science has demonstrated that. Well, even that's still fairly, last few hundred years, this understanding of this. So when we look at the yugas, sometimes it can be helpful to just recognize the yuga that we're in, right? So to know that everyone in this yuga doesn't have the same consciousness, but the mass consciousness is that success has more to do with, and we're just transitioning. So the other thing about the yugas is they go down and they go up. Right, so we have descending and ascending. So we are in ascending Dwapara, and that's a very good thing. Consciousness is being more and more elevated, and we're moving toward the higher ages. But it's also a time of conflict and transition when we are leaving Kali Yuga consciousness. So even though we're not in it anymore, Jesus came and lived during Kali Yuga as one of the hardships of his incarnation is that the mass consciousness was, not ready for him, but there were some who were. And his teaching and his, lives on, right? It lives on. So it still got through. And many were able to eventually receive him. That's a line from Scripture: to all who received him gave he the power to become the sons of God. So it's really a practice within yoga to be receptive to this higher energy. And the gurus come, the great masters come in every age. They come, it said, they come as a call, as a response to a sincere prayer. And also it said that when vice rises, when darkness rises and virtue declines, God incarnates in the form of masters and saints to, masters in particular, to help the mass consciousness, to bring the light into the world. And for all of us, the teaching of yoga is we are already divine souls. So we're remembering who we are. This journey, this incarnation, we've become, through the gunas, through the qualities of the consciousness of the time, the light gets obscured from us, but it never is removed from us. We're never without that light. And the more that we understand the teachings, the more that we can work with them. So again, I would say for myself, I can fall into Kali Yuga consciousness. I can be looking at my progress, and if I don't see it tangibly, it can be difficult for me to trust it energetically. And what I've learned over the years with transformation is energy is much more important than what you see physically. If you work on the energy, if you focus on energy, Dwapara, if you focus on thought, Treta, if you focus on divine grace and truth, Satya, you will transform and the material will change. Right? So sometimes we approach it through material steps. I do that in my life. I take material action. But the truth is, it can seem, every time I've gone through a period of transformation, which over the years I've gone through many, it can seem as if I'm not making any progress on the material realm. And it takes a lot of faith to trust that it's working. And this is where having the good company of soul friends who can see and also know the teachings. They see you and they know the teachings, so they can encourage me. And if a friend comes to me, I can encourage them to say, you've got the right attitude, you're practicing that, right? You're practicing the vibrations of the higher yugas and drawing that grace to you. So having the philosophy is something very helpful in my life. Another reason that it's helpful is it helps me not over-identify with a experience that I'm having. It's much better for me to recognize, oh, this is a vibration of Kali Yuga, or Raja Yuga, or Treta Yuga, or Satya Yuga. Or how can I tune into those vibrations? The practice of yoga tunes me into a higher vibration. I'm going to guess it came from Satya Yuga. I don't know. I don't know that I've ever heard. I just know that it is understood to come from a higher age. So Treta or Satya. It seems to me Satya, my experience with it. It's just so, it aligns with truth. It's all about truth, right? So when I practice yoga, any of the tools in practices of yoga, pranayama, with consciousness or breathing technique, yoga postures, how I eat, the foods that I eat, the music that I listen to, the company that I keep, all of these things help to align my consciousness with a higher yuga and draw to me the higher vibrations of that yuga. Same thing with the gunas, right? They work together. So it helps me as I move through the day to have, to remind myself, and I'm offering this for you, that I'm a divine soul, right? And I have these qualities of the gunas that are impacting me, and I have some choices I can make that will make my journey much easier and also support me in my highest aspirations. So the food that I eat, the company that I keep, the activities that I engage in, all of these things support the vibrations of where I want to be. And if they're not, rather than be harsh with myself, I use it as data, as information. So I hope that's helpful for you today. And I hope it helps you bring these philosophical teachings a little closer to home. I just invite you in this next week, or maybe over the next month, to ask yourself as you move through the day if you can perceive any of the gunas in your experience, tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic, or the yugas, Kali, Dwapara, Treta, Satya, and how, and can you work with anything to shift it if you'd like to. I mean, I think part of the practice is shift to a higher age of consciousness and shift to a higher guna until we fully remember who we are. So great to be with you. Great souls, wishing you a beautiful day and many blessings.